Canadian police begin attempt to clear protesters blocking Ambassador Bridge to U.S. Canadian police have begun an attempt to clear protesters Saturday morning from the Ambassador Bridge across from Detroit, intending to end a 6-day blockage of North America's busiest international crossing by demonstrators decrying COVID-19 measures. Dozens of police officers approached protesters at the foot of the bridge on the Canadian side, in the city of Windsor, after 8 a.m. ET. There were some early signs some protesters were moving away on their own, dismantling a makeshift tent area where they received food and shelter. Some pedestrians remain near an intersection on a road leading to the bridge around 10 a.m., including some talking to or yelling at a line of standing police officers. No arrest was immediately seen by a CNN crew there. Around 20 protest vehicles remained. The move comes a day after a judge issued an injunction allowing police to begin clearing the bridge area and ending the blockade that has snarled supply chains and alarmed political leaders. Police clear protesters and their vehicles from a blockade at the entrance to the Ambassador Bridge Saturday morning in Windsor, Canada. The judge gave demonstrators until 7 p.m. Friday to end the blockade. The number of demonstrators dwindled overnight, and a few dozen vehicles remained parked at the foot of the bridge as the sun rose Saturday, a CNN crew there said. More demonstrators eventually drove away, including after police officers moved in Saturday morning. "We urge all demonstrators to act lawfully and peacefully," Windsor police tweeted shortly before 8:30 a.m., announcing their move at the bridge. Commuters are still being asked to avoid the areas affected by the demonstrations at this time. Demonstrators could be arrested if they are involved in blocking the bridge, and vehicles may be seized and could be forfeited in case of a conviction, Windsor police said after Friday's court order. "One by one, we'll start towing the cars if required," Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens said Friday, a few hours before the judge's deadline. The Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, also declared a state of emergency on Friday, promising severe consequences for those who are taking part in blockades at the bridge and elsewhere in the province, including at demonstrations in the nation's capital of Ottawa. People who don't leave the blockades could face a maximum penalty of $100,000 and up to 1 year in prison, he said. "So let me be as clear as I can. There will be consequences for these actions, and they will be severe. We've already started by going after the money funding the illegal occupation," Ford said. Demonstrations in Canada began last month, starting with truckers who convoyed from the west to Ottawa to protest new rules forcing Canadian truckers crossing the U.S.-Canadian border to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or face quarantine in their homes for 2 weeks when they return. That protest drew other demonstrators around the country in resistance to other COVID-19 preventative measures, including restrictions on gatherings and mask mandates, especially in schools. Canada has one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, with about 4 in every 5 Canadians fully vaccinated, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. And nearly 90% of the country's truckers are fully vaccinated and eligible to cross the border, according to the Canadian government. Yet for 2 weeks, demonstrators have blockaded Ottawa's downtown core, prompting a judge there to rule Monday that they must stop honking. And the Ambassador Bridge between Windsor and Detroit is not the only affected border crossing. Demonstrators also have used semi-trailers, and sometimes farm equipment and other vehicles, to block crossings between Emerson, Manitoba, and Pembina, North Dakota, as well as at the Coutts access point between Alberta and Montana. The Canadian protests, explained. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson told CNN he expects more demonstrators this weekend. "It's completely unacceptable," Watson said. "Particularly in the neighborhoods where some of the protesters are going into restaurants and refusing to wear a mask and harassing staff and really being belligerent to the residents of our city." U.S. officials warn similar protests are possible. The Canadian protests are igniting concerns among U.S. officials that similar demonstrations may be sparked across the border. Right-wing news media outlets have raised the prospect of like-minded rallies in the US and offered positive coverage of those in Canada. The protests in Canada already are incredibly damaging to many across the U.S. Midwest, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer told CNN on Friday, adding the protests have been hurting us in Michigan since day one. We are at an economic crisis because of this illegal blockade, which is becoming a homeland security issue, Whitmer said. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security warned state and local officials in a bulletin that a convoy of truckers protesting COVID-19 vaccine mandates may soon begin in the U.S. and potentially affect the Super Bowl in Southern California. The convoy will potentially begin in California as early as mid-February and arrive in Washington, D.C., as late as mid-March, potentially impacting the Super Bowl LVI scheduled for 13th of February and the State of the Union address scheduled for 1st of March, the bulletin said. In addition, a group in the U.S. said it is organizing 2 trucker convoys that will head to the U.S.-Canada border in Buffalo on Saturday and Sunday. However, the city said Friday the group had not applied for permits to hold events. Nor have the organizers contacted our special events office to arrange for the appropriate insurance and public safety planning that is required for all events in the city to ensure the health and safety of residents and visitors, Buffalo City spokesperson Michael DeGeorge told CNN. It is always a concern when laws that are designed to keep people and property protected are willfully ignored. How Canadian officials have responded to the demonstrations. Canadian officials have generally stood firm in their appeals to end the blockades at the border and the protests in Ottawa, though those calls often have fallen on deaf ears. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reiterated Friday that the demonstrations will end. If you joined the protests because you're tired of COVID, you now need to understand that you are breaking laws, Trudeau said in a Friday news conference. You don't want to end up losing your license, end up with a criminal record, which will impact your job, your livelihood. The Trudeau government said it will send more officers to protests across the country, adding the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Canada's national police force, continues to show decisive action. If you liked our video, click like and subscribe to our channel, follow the Warm News on our channel.